So, got a little bit of bad news about the SA, and well, I'll just tell you, take a look for yourself. So, engine is just stripping the engine down, getting it ready to pull, and that is because it ate a bearing, or two, or three. There's four of them, so yeah. Could have destroyed all four bearings, or could have got locked on one. But anyway, the cause of this was low oil pressure, or no oil pressure, because my gauge was showing 0 oil pressure. But because I'm stupid, I didn't take it seriously. I thought the gauge was at fault, but I guess it was the exact opposite. And before anybody starts foaming at the mouth in the comments about, oh, well, Apex then yeah, no, motherfucker, the Apex seals are right here. They're all perfectly fine. So yeah. Let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and start where everything started. So I went and dropped my daughter off, picked up my friend, and we went driving around for a few hours. And everything seemed perfectly fine. Nothing out of the ordinary. Car was running perfectly fine. Climbed RPM just fine. Everything was absolutely normal for like 2.5 hours. Then it was about time to start going home. It was like 10 or 11 at night. And I get on the highway, a red line through each gear, first through fifth. And the only thing that seemed out of the ordinary was it struggled to climb RPM after 6 to 6,500 RPM. I got a booger in my nose. Yeah, I didn't think too much of it. At 7,000 RPM, it did struggle always, because it used a 465 CFM Holly, which doesn't fuel a 1.3 liter enough to go past 7,000 RPM. And before you piston guys get in on that, no, it's a rotary engine, uses more fuel than a piston engine with a smaller displacement. So no, a 465 Holly cannot fuel this 1.3 liter rotary enough to go over 7,000. So that was normal. But 66 to 6,500 RPM and struggling to go past that, no, that is not normal. So I didn't think too much of it. In fifth gear, after failing to reach redline at 6,500, I let off, let it come back down to 4,000 RPM, and I started cruising. And it seemed fine from there. And I didn't think too much of it. It worried me a little bit, sure, but I didn't think too much of it at that moment. Then 2 to 3 miles down the road, I tried to let's see, I think I downshift, or I just pushed the throttle in more. And I was trying to pass a car that was in front of me, and I failed to do that. Because what was happening was the RPM was slowly dropping. Slowly but surely, it was dropping. So I put my foot down to the floor, and it went up to about 4,500 RPM, and then slowly started going way back down. And then somewhere between 2 to 3,000 RPM, the engine cut off and died. And then I immediately started smelling burning clutch. Well, of course that's not good, so I take it out of gear, but I'm still rolling. The car's still in the on position with the key. So I put it back in gear, put my foot down with the clutch, then put it back in gear, release the clutch. I immediately start smelling burning clutch again. So it tells me something's obviously wrong. It's slipping in the clutch like hell, enough to burn it and cause that nasty ass smell. So I pull over to the side of the highway, and I try to turn my key and to start it back up. The engine does not turn. All I hear is a chick. So my friend gets out, pushes the car, attempting to bump start it, which is like popping the clutch, and that fails. Of course, we couldn't really get too far, because there's those little ripples on the side of the road that keep you awake if you start to veer off the road and you're falling asleep. Those made it really hard to move the car. So call a tow truck. 45 minutes later, they show up, get to my house, pay them $80, and I try to bump start it myself, going down the driveway, because it's a slight hill. It can do that. But both times, all it did was stop the car where it was, and the second time I did it, it actually skidded the tires. So yeah, So I put it back in this spot and was troubleshooting it since over the next week. At first the engine was absolutely locked. I chocked the wheels just like that, and I tried to turn the engine by hand. It would not turn, it would not budge. So I put the trans back in gear to park it because my e-brake does not work, and I forgot about it. So I was trying to turn the engine by hand with the car in gear. So I was essentially trying to turn the wheels with the engine by hand, and that was getting me nowhere. So I thought that the engine was seized on more than just bearings. Well, I borrow a boroscope from a friend, and I take my intake and exhaust manifolds off to at least stick the boroscope in there to try and see if there's anything I can see out of the ordinary. Well, after about a day or two of that, I realized that the car was still in gear. So I take it out of gear, chocking the wheels of course, and then turn the engine by hand. It spins rather freely. It still spins harder than it normally should if you're spinning an engine by hand. It's not, and the car's not in gear, but nonetheless it did spin rather freely. Well, not freely, I still had to like push it and put some effort into it, but still, you know what I mean. And all 6 apex seals were fully intact. No cracking, no anything. I put my finger in the exhaust port and or exhaust ports, not port, because there's 2 of them, and felt around the housing in that area, and it was all smooth all the way across. So that tells me that nothing got dragged through the engine, which is good news. But then I drained my oil, and well, here's a picture of that. There is glitter in my oil pan. Now, glitter meaning bearing shrapnel, meaning when it seized on a bearing. And when that happens, you need to take the engine apart and rebuild it, which I was already planning to do. So right now, I'm really just hoping that my housings and irons are okay, because I'm using Renesis rotors, Renesis E-shaft, Renesis front and rear stationary gears. So the entire rotating assembly is going to be replaced regardless. So as long as this issue is isolated in just the rotating assembly, then I'm still good. And well, if not, and I may have dropped a housing or something, I have 1 spare RX5 housing ready to go. And if not, then I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. But hopefully my housings are okay. I do have a spare set of REPU irons. Hopefully I don't have to use those or my spare housing. But just keep my fingers crossed for housings and irons in this engine to be okay. Because if they are, I can move on with my build, and that is my my next part of this video, is I'm going to talk about the stuff that I got for the build. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that. One thing I did forget is that I do have a plan B, and that is a spare 12 I picked up from a friend for 700 bucks. Here's the pictures of that engine right here, and yeah, I'm gonna pull the Killer B out and drop that in and drive that around in the meantime while I rebuild the engine. So yeah. Okay, so here I have my rebuild kit, my stud kit, my clutch and flywheel kit along with tools for the clutch and flywheel kit, and my spare RX5 housing. Now, mainly I just want to talk about my choice of product that I got, because there was a lot of naysayers that had a lot to say against my choice of product, and mainly it concerned my choice to use all OEM seals for this build. Now, OEM side seals, of course, are a given that you use no matter what your application is, so I'm not really going to talk about those at all. But OEM corner seals and apex seals, there's a lot of reasons against them, and there's a lot of reasons to use them. Now, first I'll start off by saying, if you have a high horsepower application, like a drag application that sees 5, 6, 7, up to 1,000 wheel horsepower, then sure, go with an aftermarket seal. But if you're not going to see high horsepower, like anywhere from 150 up to 300 wheel horsepower, or even 400 wheel horsepower, then OEM is perfectly fine to use, and there's no real reason to not use them. But you know, price does get a lot of people, and these are rather expensive at $450 per set. Whereas you can get an aftermarket unbreakable sill for like $200 to $300 something bucks. And that's one reason people don't want to use them. The other reason is because they break. Now it's understandable that an unbreakable sill, being a stronger sill, sounds like a sill that will last longer than stock because they don't break. Well, there's a couple problems with that. Biggest problem being the housing chrome surface. So where that's rooted is the fact that Mazda spent thousands and thousands of hours in R&D to develop an apex sill that wears evenly with the chrome housing surface over time. And that's the real goal here. And that's my thinking behind this as well. I don't want a sill that's harder than the housing chrome surface that's going to wear into the housing and, you know, destroy my housings, because as a lot of people don't exactly know about the older 13B engines or 12A engines, but older pre-86 housings are extremely hard to come by, especially the 13B housings. When you can find them in the new old stock, which is brand new, never sold for like 40 years, and it just sat on the shelf forever, those are $1,000 a piece if you can find them. And you know, sometimes finding usable housings are just as hard. I have a set of 13B repo housings in my storage that are completely flaked and fucked, but can be re-chromed, which is kind of an iffy process. It's like $1,150 for a set of those, and that's cheap for a pair of housings like that. That's cheap. But anyway, my choice in apex sills is rooted in even wear over time. I'm not going to see more than 180 low horsepower, maybe like 170 or something. And yeah, my build just doesn't call for them. And the same goes for corner sills as well. Now there's a video that Hauser Tech posted where he took one of his REW engines and then compression tested it with Atkins solid corner sills, tore it apart, and then mock rebuilt it with the OEM sills, and the result was higher compression results. And you know, the whole wear thing applies to the irons as well. I don't want a sill that's gonna wear into you know, major parts of the engine. There's softer sills as well on the market. I don't know if I said that yet or not, but it does the exact opposite effect that a unbreakable sill would do. The housing will wear down the apex sill and you'll just get low compression and have to rebuild it sooner than not. So because I'm building for longevity, that's where my thinking is rooted for using all OEM sills. Next thing I want to talk about is this stud kit. So this is the Elite Rotary 10mm stud kit. And they're the exact same size as a stock, so you don't have to do any machining into your irons or housings, which is a very big plus, which makes this a very affordable option. And also, what's really good about these is it helps strengthen your engine as well. So if you were doing a high horsepower application, then these would be great for you. They should be good for up to 600 to 700 low horsepower. And what these do is they help reduce engine flex. And yes, that's actually a thing. Your engine will flex, and it can cause major issues because it can bring the engine clearances out of tolerance. There's a lot behind that, and I'm not going to explain a lot of it here, but that's one of the reasons why you'd get a stud kit like this. But the reason I got it is because it has a dual torque sequence. I think that's the right phrasing for it. And by that, what I mean is the way that you install these is you put the engine together, you put these in the holes, then you torque each stud down to 10 foot-pounds. Then from there, you take the little factory washers, put them in, put the washers on that comes with the kit, and then you put the nuts on, and then you torque them down to factory spec. And the thing behind this is I'll have a better and more even consistent torque across the whole engine. whereas with the factory through bolts or tension bolts, it can vary and it can change while you're torquing it down. So to help eliminate that, that's why I got the stud kit. And these stud kits shipped within the US are $423 for the set. Let's see, a factory XD RX7 clutch kit. So XD, and of course my 8.8 pound flywheel. Got it resurfaced for $40, so can't complain about that. And of course all the other stuff as well. Let's see, the 76-78 custom gasket kit to suit a tall port R5 engine, or an engine that uses R5 plates with the tall port center iron. That's what I mean. And then last but not least, internals for my oil pump. So because my engine failure that I explained earlier had to do with the oil system, I want to replace everything I can. So that includes the internals for my oil pump. I don't know if this housing is compatible with my engine or not, but I have plenty of other housings to go off of. This one I believe came out of a 6-port Renesis engine, but it's similar to older ones as well, so maybe I can use it. If not, then I can at least reuse the housing that's in my engine. But the internals I do want to replace, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I think that's about it. So I'm going to go ahead and end the video off here. And yeah, till next time.